Alright, so today we're going to be looking into primary and secondary sources. I know we've already been looking into some things to help our historical research, but these are two very important things that we need to get a grasp on before we can start moving forward. So what do you guys know already about primary sources?
There are things like articles and letters that can tell you about an event in history.
Alright, anything else, guys?
Yeah, primary sources are written by people about history.
Good start. You guys are on the right path. Anyone else?
Primary sources are books.
Right. Primary sources definitely can be books, but not always. Usually books are actually secondary sources. Does anyone know any other types of secondary sources?
Pictures.
Nice. Sometimes a picture can be a secondary source, but more often than not, it's actually a primary source. I'll get into that a little bit later. But why is that? All right. Can anyone tell me the difference between primary and secondary source? If you guys already know this.
Yeah, is it primary sources go first, and then like secondary is like second source?
Okay, you are partially correct, but much more needs to be considered before determining if something is a primary or a secondary source. Before we begin working with these two types of sources, we must first be able to distinguish between the two of them. Please write down what I put on the board. All right. So right here, we're going to have primary sources. Right here, yep. Secondary sources. All right, so just take these notes down as I put them up. And then I'm also going to put a few examples up that you guys should copy down. All right. So right now, I have written down under primary sources is that it's happened. Primary source means that that the source was taken directly from a historical event, like it happened that day. So, and then a secondary source would be something that happened after the fact. As you can see, that's the main difference between the two of them. A primary source, an example could be a letter, a written diary, an artifact, or a picture. And a secondary source could be a journal, article, or a book. Do you guys all understand what I'm saying?
Sorry, Mr. W, I'm still a little bit confused.
All right, so I understand it's a little confusing, but relax and pay attention. And we'll figure this out. So if I, Joe, if I were to write a letter right now to a friend or have someone take a picture of me, it would become a historical evidence for the future. If I end up becoming famous from my teaching amazing history and people wanted to learn more about me in the future, then something I wrote or real-time picture of me would then become a primary source. Josh. You look like you're getting a little sidetracked there. Do you think one day, I think maybe you could be famous? If someone wanted to learn about you before you became famous, what is something they may look at?
I would say, since I want to be just like you, my amazing history as well, teacher.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Do you think they might want to know like what you looked like though?
Yeah, I think maybe.
What would be a good way for someone to see what you looked like?
Probably either like a picture or, yeah, I'd say a picture the best fit for that.
Perfect, you got it. A picture is a perfect example of something that could be a primary source. Joe, you following along with this?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me an example of a secondary source?
I'm sorry, I really wasn't. I really don't know.
Okay, don't worry, we'll figure this all out. What is something that someone, excuse me, could use besides a picture or something they wrote to learn about them?
I'm sorry, I'm still lost. I really don't know.
It's alright. Well, have you ever gone to the library and tried to learn about something or someone that happened in history?
Yeah.
Well, what did you get at the library to find out new information?
I usually go to the computer or the books. I
Yes,
pick up books.
perfect. Articles that can be found online or books are perfect examples of secondary sources. Can anyone tell me why?
Because they were made after something happened?
Very good, you're absolutely right. If something was written about a historical event after it happened, it usually is a secondary source. Just like Josh said, secondary sources are often books or online articles. Now let's look at some other examples of sources. All right. I'm gonna show you guys some examples of sources, and I want you guys to let me know if you think that they're primary or secondary. So here's the first source. It's a picture right here. What kind of source do you guys think this would be? Josh?
A primary source because it's a dated picture of someone.
Very, very good. All right. Let's try a different one. We have right here we have an article. Tiger turns back clock to win Masters for first major since 2008. What kind of source would this be?
This is a journal article from a website, so I would think it would be a secondary source.
Awesome. You guys are really starting to get this. All right. Now here's a little trickier one.
Hast du etwas Zeit für mich? Dann singe ich ein Lied für dich von 99 Luftballons.
All right. How about this? Yeah.
A song can't be a source.
It absolutely can. Anyone have any idea if it would be considered a primary or secondary source? Josh?
A secondary source, I think. Isn't a song usually about like someone?
You're right. Does everyone agree?
Wait, shouldn't like a song be a primary source? If someone makes a song and people want to learn about the artist, wouldn't that be like considered not the same as other secondary sources?
Awesome, Joe. Good job. This is exactly what I wanted you guys to realize. Depending on the source itself and what the person using the source is attempting to learn can change the type of source it is. In other words, something could be both types, and a song would be a good example of that. I now would like you to get into groups of 4. Actually, you're already in your group of 4. And you'll need to answer the following questions about the source of the board for your ticket out of the door today. All right, so get in your groups. And up here I have a picture of a magazine clipping. And also, when you guys are working with your groups, I'm going to read off a few questions, and you guys are just going to just write down what you think the answers would be together. So you guys can discuss amongst yourselves, or you can just write down what you think it would be. So the first question is, do you think that this is a primary or secondary source? All right, you guys take a second to figure that out, write it down. All right, the second question is, who do you think made this source?
Doesn't say who made this source.
Thanks, guys. You'll either have to come up with an educated guess or move on to the next question to ask, which is, why would this source have been created?
Oh, okay. So this magazine would have been published for people to read it?
That is a good start. Write that down and maybe try and come up with some other ideas. Hey, Joe, if you don't focus and you hand me that ticket out of the door, you're not going to be able to get credit for participation today.
Oh man, I better get on task.
All right, that is the end of class today. Please pass in your tickets on the out the door on your way out to me, and have a great day.